So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
Soul as soul now, what about that prayer of sinlessness? I like to go back to my main tone epitome, if you don't mind. It's the prayer of sinlessness, fulfilling the Christ demand to rebuke sin. You see, every one of these temptations must be rebuked within us by the same integrity of the 1, 2, 3, the mind, spirit, and soul. The destruction, now we come to soul as soul, the destruction of sin through Christ is the only means of canceling sin. Prayer as such cannot cancel sin. Ordinary prayer, an empty sense of prayer, has no power to cancel sin. It's the Christ power, the power of the cybernetic idea within us. She says prayer is not to be used as a confessional to cancel sin. Such an error would impede true religion. You notice here that she uses the term religion and says true religion. True religion. I think going into the term, isn't it religare or religio, that it actually means for us to be bound back to our principle. To be bound back to our principle. This is true religion, to be bound back to mind, spirit, and soul at this point. So she says that using prayer just superficially as a confessional, trying to cancel sin, cancel the penalty due for sin, that this is an error. So this is something that has to be corrected by the negative feedback mechanism, by the homeostasis. And she says, how is that done? It's done in the way that sin is only forgiven as it is destroyed. Destroyed by what? Christ, by the divine cybernetic idea within us, by going back to mind, spirit, and soul. It's really very simple, isn't it? The concept, the principle of it is so simple. It follows the system. It follows the pattern of the divine nature. Just adhere to the pattern of the divine nature. Allow that to scale you every time, because every time you go back to that pattern, you are scaled again by the pattern. And this is how the only way that sin can be forgiven. If prayer, she says, nourishes the belief that sin is canceled and that man is made better merely by praying, then prayer is an evil. He grows worse. What? See? He grows worse toward equilibrium. Yeah? Who continues Cybernetic continues in sin, continues to deviate from the course, simply because he fancies himself forgiven. An apostle says that the Son of God, Christ, came to destroy the works of the devil. I just love that term, works. You can just hear that it's the counterfeit, the opposite of the working of the calculus. Whatever is not the working of the calculus is the works of the devil. It's a scientific definition, not a personal. There is no personal devil. We should follow our divine exemplar. Follow Jesus again as the ideal, as the master exemplar, and seek the destruction of all evil works. Well, what are evil works? What would evil works be then? How would you define it at this point in the development of the text? Yes, exactly. Not going back to 1, 2, 3, mind, spirit, soul. This is including any error and disease. We cannot escape the penalty due for sin. Also, I want to mention again, you see, every time that issue of error comes up, it's an issue for the homeostasis, it's an issue for the negative feedback system to correct the error, to bring us back on the way of mind, spirit, and soul. We cannot escape the penalty due if we don't adhere to that course. The penalty due for sin. The scriptures say if we deny Christ, he also will deny us. You reap what you sow again. The denying, it's a balance between the denial of the Christ is the denial of ourselves. If we deny Christ, we deny ourselves. If we affirm Christ, we affirm ourselves and our own evolution. So the temptation here is, how can we escape the penalty due for sin? Maybe we can escape the penalty. And she says, no. She always answers no, in a way, through the text. How is sin destroyed? Only through Christ, only through the sinlessness of mind, spirit, and soul. This is the cybernetic idea within you, the growing idea within you. Sin can't be canceled or excused in any other way. So it takes more than just a confession, and you can't continue to sin and return to it thinking it's been forgiven. That's going right against the cybernetic flow. You have to work it out through Christ and follow the divine exemplar. There is no substitute here. So soul, as soul, is asking for that coincidence within us, that lining up within us, the identity with the cybernetic principle. So often in the textbook, the Christ, the introduction of the Christ will come in at the point of soul. The actual term Christ will come into the text. And here we see that happening. And we are asked to be coincident with that line, that spiritual line of mind, spirit, and soul, which is a non-linear line, isn't it? It's non-linear. You're wondering what that means. Yes, it's cybernetic. And it means that humanly you cannot figure out, you can't calculate what will come out of adhering to that line, of adhering to mind, spirit, and soul. What will come out is really, you can't predict it. All that you can predict is that it will be of the same nature and that it will bring to you the unfolding nature of principle, life, truth, and love. It will identify you with the divine principle, and once identified with the divine principle, you will demonstrate what your principle demonstrates, life, truth, and love. But the specifics of that, the individuality of that, will be different for each one of us, and it is in that way unpredictable, non-linear. So we come to soul as principle, and the temptation there is going to be the one that says, maybe we can be pardoned for sin. See, the last one was what? Maybe we can escape the penalty due for sin. Now maybe we can be pardoned for sin. First of all, mind. We said, maybe we can get away with it through a loophole in the law. Then as spirit, it was the temptation, why should we bother at all to strive, to adhere to that order, that line? Then at the point of soul, maybe we can escape the penalty due for not following that line. And now, soul as principle, maybe we can be pardoned for that sin. She says, no. Sin is not pardoned, but it is corrected. Isn't that beautiful? It's corrected. By whom? Who will correct that? Well, we know that it is the homeostasis that corrects, the negative feedback that corrects, but she lifts it even higher. She takes it right to its ultimate source in its divine principle, and she says, divine love corrects and governs man. The epitome here is that only working in accordance with the divine principle reforms the sinner. So divine love, it's divine love. This is the principle that is regulating you. The homeostasis is divine love. The homeoraisa is divine love that corrects and governs man. Men may pardon, but this divine principle alone reforms the sinner. So men are not little regulators. We are not regulators tending the regulator. There's only one regulator, and that's divine principle, love. God is not separate from, and every time I hear God, I hear that divine self-organizing principle. Love is not separate from the wisdom he bestows, not separate from what is given to us through absolute Christian Science and Christian Science, through the positive feedback and the negative feedback. The talents he gives, we must improve. I always thought that was a funny rendering, the talents he gives. You read that and you think, well, some are able to tap dance and others are able to play the piano, and that we've been given certain talents and we should improve them. But of course, we know that that isn't what she means. The talents he gives, well, what is a talent other than being a marked innate ability? A talent can be a natural endowment. It can be a unit of money. It reminds us of what we find in Matthew 25, Jesus' parable of the talents. And that parable was what? That the Lord gave to his servants, not the Lord, not Jesus, but Jesus was telling the parable about a Lord who had servants, and he gave to his servants according to their ability. That's interesting. He gave them talents according to their talent, because they both mean talent. And so to one he gave 5 talents, and to the second he gave 2 talents, and to the third he gave 1 talent. And to the first with 5 talents, he made 5 more from it. To the second, who had 2 talents, he made 2 more. Autocatalytic, huh? The 5 made 5 more. The 2 made 2 more. But to the one who had 1 talent, he buried it. So to the first 2, that Lord said the following. He said to the 2 who used their talents, improved. That's what improve means. It means to use, to increase the productivity or value of, to put to good use or use profitably. That's what improve means. And from the early Anglo-Norman meaning to turn to profit. He said, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. What's the rest? I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord." And to the third who buried his talent, he said, "Thou wicked and slothful servant, take the talent from him and give it to him that hath 10. For unto every one that hath," here it is, "shall be given, and he shall have abundance, but from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath, and he shall be cast into outer darkness." So be autocatalytic, huh? Be autocatalytic. The talents he gives, well, what talents have we been given? Right up to where we are in the development of our tones, right up to soul as principle. These are the talents that we must improve. Calling on such a principle to forgive our work badly done. You see, not doing the work that there is to do, not doing that work, not working cybernetically to get into the rhythm of that flow, or what has been left undone, that implies a vain supposition that we have nothing to do. We don't have anything to do but to ask pardon. That's all we have to do, ask pardon, and then afterwards we're free to go back and repeat the offense, to repeat that course which is not cybernetic, but equilibrium in nature. That's the closeness within us. So improving God's talents reforms us, and this is what is meant by working in accordance with the divine principle. This reforms the sinner.